you're living in a small area, and you're isolated.
Were you in a dormitory or were in individual cells?
It was one small area for civils, and the criminals had all kinds of different areas. It's like a size of a studio apartment with 5 beds in it. But I was virtually isolated because it's very rare for a civil to come in. And when they did, there's a purge clause.
Right.
So they came in, and they were sentenced for 6 months, and they were said, you have to give up your child, or you have to pay child support.
Or say I'm sorry, or whatever.
Whatever it was, and then they got out. But not me. There was no purge clause. So,
okay, but what I'm getting at is for the people that don't know, explain to them what it's like when you wake up in the morning, you go to a count, how you have breakfast. People out there have no idea.
Everything is served to you in this room. You're isolated from everybody. They wait in the middle of the night. They bang on the windows and wake you up. I was so tired. I had 3 years of no sleep. When I came out, I was
It's
dragging.
also very, very loud in there.
It's loud. There are fights. People get murdered. It's dirty. It's built on a landfill, so the water's contaminated. The food is definitely tainted. I mean,
well, most of the food there is prepared by inmates.
Yes.
It's supervised by a few staff personnel.
But there's something fishy about the food.
Let's take a minute to
when
talk.
it's not fish. That's what you're saying.
Elena, let's hear a little bit about your situation. We haven't had a chance to talk about that, so tell us what happened to you.
I was a political prisoner. I was arrested in Washington, D.C. on a bogus, trumped-up disruption of Congress charge, which stemmed from my respectful request to be permitted to testify in opposition to a federal judicial nominee who was the subject of a public hearing at the Senate Judiciary Committee my precise words were, and I wanted to make sure that I said those words correctly because I was so nervous. So this is the page that I held, and what I said was, Mr. Chairman, there's citizen opposition to Judge Wesley based on his documented corruption as a New York Court of Appeals judge. May I testify? And for those respectful words, which were not spoken until after the presiding chairman had already announced the committee hearing adjourned, I was taken out, cuffed, held over to be arraigned on a disruption of Congress charge. What I did could never support a disruption of Congress charge, so I was prosecuted on materially false prosecution documents. And I should say that what I did is not open to debate. There was a videotape of the Senate Judiciary Committee hearing. And when you compare that videotape to the prosecution documents, you see that they are completely, they are materially false. I was entitled to have that trumped up case thrown out on the papers. Understand that what was behind this case was the corruption of federal judicial selection, because the dirty secret in Washington is that these federal judgeships are about political deals. And a deal was made for Judge Wesley's nomination from New York's highest state court to the Second Circuit Court of Appeals, which covers New York, Vermont, and Connecticut. In any event, because this case is so politically explosive, it was prosecuted in a court that is funded by Congress, directly controlled by Congress, and I was railroaded to trial by a judge who denied me discovery to which I was entitled, witnesses to which I was entitled. Mind you, I was entitled to have the case thrown out, and any fair and impartial tribunal would have done that.
Of course, now, while you're in there, you can't very well go to appeal now because you're in jail. You can't appeal in at that time.
There was no appeal of Congress.
Well, I was forced to trial, railroaded to trial before this judge, convicted, and when I was sentenced, he denied me a stay pending appeal. Obviously, I had appeal rights. But he knew that I had been so deprived of due process that this conviction could never stand on appeal. And he wanted to be sure that I was incarcerated. The only way he was going to be able to do that is to throw me in jail before I was able to appeal.
How long were you sentenced to?
I was, well, this is it. Even my prosecutor, the U.S. attorney, did not seek my incarceration. His recommendation was a 5-day suspended sentence. The court services did a pre-sentence report, and they, of course, recommended no jail time whatsoever. Nonetheless, the judge, without any basis in the record, imposed a sentence of 92 days, which he was willing to suspend if I agreed to a long list of terms and conditions, which were so onerous, so unconstitutional. They included that I write letters of apology to the Senate Judiciary Committee, to the involved senators from New York, Senators Clinton and Schumer, each of whom go down in flames in this case because this case exposes their corruption in office. And I emphasize that because, of course, Senator Clinton is running for re-election, and she is the presumptive front-runner among the Democrats for the presidency in 2008, only because the press has refused to do its job of reporting on her record, Schumer's record, what goes on in Washington, ... But to answer the question as to why I was incarcerated for 6 months, when I declined the terms of probation, which included these apology letters, the judge, rather than imposing the 92-day sentence which he had announced, doubled it to 6 months to begin immediately. And so I was jailed. I want to add one other point. Not only was I convicted only because of judicial misconduct, sentenced and jailed because of judicial misconduct of the lower court judge, but when I was incarcerated, I sought release pending appeal, filed the appropriate motion papers, was entitled to release, and of course, you know what courts do. The appellate court simply denied release without reasons, because you couldn't possibly give reasons to justify my being incarcerated, and I was.
Thank you very much. You've been watching jails, judges, and incarcerations here, and I can't believe what happened to you. It's incredible. And it's
and
the both of
Dyandria.
you, I don't know, I don't even know what to think. But what recourse do you have at this point? Is there anything that you can do to?
We're here, right? We're here,
That's
and
better.
Overturn the sentence?
What has to be done is to expose the degree to which judges act lawlessly, get away with it, indeed get promoted for it. Judge Wesley, whose nomination I opposed, committed misconduct on our state's highest court. There was no effort, desire to examine what he had done on the New York Court of Appeals so as to disqualify him from further judicial office. He was rewarded. He was promoted. I just want to say, Judge Wesley's misconduct related to what he did in a lawsuit brought by me on behalf of the Center for Judicial Accountability against the New York State Commission on Judicial Conduct.
Unfortunately, that committee does zero. I've had at least 20 people, and I know that have submitted complaints, and they have done absolutely nothing. They fold the papers, ship them back and forth. 3 months later, they say, I'm sorry, there's not enough evidence. Well, you got a mountain of evidence that you submitted, and they close the books and say, you can't do nothing.
But that's the show in town.